This is basically what all of my customers look like when they come in. I think I need some wedging. It's a bit blown out.
There we go.
Is that what Bike Fit Tuesdays is going to be all about today?
Yeah, welcome to today's episode of Bike Fit Tuesdays. Today we are covering wedging. So when you're in the world of cycling, you might hear people talk about wedging in cycling shoes. In today's video, we want to talk about what wedging is, discuss whether you need it or not, and cover shims, which is a completely different thing, which kind of look the same, but it's different.
I think we should also cover the fact that there are different types of wedging and they all have different applications and needs. And a lot of it is hugely misunderstood. So that's kind of what I really wanted to get across in this video, is that we get people who come in here, they've got like 10 of these things under their shoes, and lo and behold they're having foot problems. Like, if you need 10 of these in your shoes, there's something wrong. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's something that is thicker on one end than it is on the other. So this is the only yellow wedge I could find, but it's thicker here than it is here. And in bike fitting, it's used as a means of applying tilt or canting either certain parts of the foot or the foot in its entirety, or the shoe in its entirety. Cleat wedge, they're usually yellow. I actually like these ones more. These are made by Form, which is a little firm out in southwest London. A mate of mine called Ronan makes these, and I prefer these because they're just a slightly better shape. But the Cleat Wedge has been around for years. This is one for a Shimano SPD SL or a Look. The Form one has the same application. There is also a teeny little SPD one as well. This is a BikeFit SPD, and these are used to cant the entire shoe. And the way in which they work, so they've been sold as many as a means of correcting knee tracking. They don't do that. They're sold by many as what you do is you post the medial side of the foot, the inside of the foot, and you cant it and cant it and cant it, and what it stops is the knee tracking in like so. Generally speaking, if you do that, you're going to create quite a lot of tension and torsion through the knee and through the foot. So what we do find that they do is they aid in just overall stability of the foot. In order to understand the function of this little thing, you need to think about how we walk. Most people heel strike, lateral side calcaneus at the heel bone. We pronate because everyone pronates, and we push off with the ball of the foot. Now, that, in very, very basic terms, that's the primal act of walking. However, in cycling, the foot isn't working in a primal fashion, so it needs to be affixed, and I'm going to need a prop. What happens is when the bottom of the shoe is affixed to the pedal, what happens is the foot kind of does a bit of this inside of the shoe. Right? So what the wedge does is it brings the shoe up to the foot to stop the foot from driving in. Now, this is something that this notion usually manifests itself as excessive float, and that leads a lot of people to move to like a fixed cleat. If you do that, you'll give yourself knee pain. There's a video on how to set your cleats. Fran's going to put it here. There. The usual symptom of instability is excessive float, and that's what these wedges can help to dial out. As a disclaimer, you probably don't want to be using more than one or two of these things per foot. As another important rule, they are thicker on one side than they are on the other. You should never, I repeat, never have the thickest part of this cleat wedge on the outside of your foot. If a bike fitter fits this to correct your knee tracking and fits this on the outside of the foot, take something very big and very heavy and hit him with it. And then when he asks why did you do that, say, BikeFit James told me to. That's how we apply cleat wedging in this environment. To be honest with you, we use this a little bit, but we use heel wedging significantly more. The wedge that we use by far the most is a heel-driven wedge. This is, I think, relatively uncommon in bike fitting circles because I think it's usually misunderstood. So heel wedge is exactly what it sounds. It's a wedge that you affix to the heel of the foot, to the hind foot. And the way we apply this is it aids in blocking pronation. Going back to what we were talking about in the cleat wedge section, when you've got a foot that's pronating inside the shoe, what we do is we use a wedge which is thicker on the medial side, on the inside of the foot, behind the heel, which blocks the pronation of the foot. All right. Now, actually, what we found is that this can be used as a very effective means of optimizing shoe fit. So, for example, if you've got an individual that pronates heavily in one foot but doesn't in the other, you put them in the same pair of shoes, and the shoe with the heavily pronated foot will feel too small. A couple of these in the heel, guess what? Stops the foot growth, because as you stand up, your feet grow and they flatten and they get wider. Stick one of these in the heel, or maybe two, and it blocks that pronation, and the foot retains its shape from an unloaded state. We probably use these in pretty much every fit, and in combination with the G8 2620 modular footbed, which everybody who watch BikeFitTuesdays know that that's what we like. We don't really use more than one or two of these at a time. I have used as many as 4 in very severe cases, but generally not. It can be very, very effective for stabilizing feet, knees, hips and pelvis. This is one of the more common systems. It is intended to treat what's called a forefoot varus. Now, a forefoot varus is a skeletally fixed elevation of the first line of bones. What that means is that it can't be manipulated. All right? What it usually results in is excessive pronation of the ankle joint. There's a problem with this. It's relatively uncommon. Most people possess what's called a forefoot supinatus, which is a soft tissue elevation which can be manipulated, and it doesn't result in excessive pronation. What this means is that if you apply a lot of pressure in an area where it isn't needed and it isn't wanted, you end up typically either excessively loading the first metatarsal, the ball of the foot. It can, in some cases, shift pressure to the outside, the lateral aspect of the foot, and it can also have knee ramifications. It's worth noting that there are some shoe brands, well, we can come out and say, so Specialized shoes have this built into them, and I personally, I'm not a huge believer in that, because I don't believe that everybody should have support applied to where they don't necessarily need it. But I quite often will use these to neutralize that in a Specialized shoe, so fit this this thicker part on the outside. And I know I said don't do that, but there is a reason for doing this. I do it in a Specialized shoe only. I'd never do it in a neutral shoe, apart from perhaps if you have someone who's got a valgus forefoot, extremely uncommon, which is where the fifth is elevated, not the first. So the pinky toe is elevated, not the big toe. Again, extremely uncommon. I have found through experience with using these that people almost always don't like it. When you ask them, so rather than just sticking it in the shoe and saying, right, that feels better, when you put it into the shoe, when you apply it, you ask the rider how it feels, they almost always don't like it. It feels like there's too much space being taken up inside of the shoe. They feel like there's too much pressure being put through the forefoot. There is quite a clever variation of this, again created by our friends at Form. So Ronan, you clever bugger, he basically took the forefoot wedge and cut the end off of it. And what that does result in is a slightly better. You get a little bit more space inside of the front of the shoe, but ultimately these shouldn't be applied without correct screening. And I'd say maybe 5 to 10% of the people that I treat in here possess a forefoot varus. No, it's less than that. I'd say 1 in 100. It's uncommon. So that's kind of why I would say, I'd be very careful about this. And furthermore, there's a little diagram out there from a certain website that we won't name that basically talks about putting these in and then all of a sudden it straightens the knees. And as we alluded to earlier, or discussed earlier, knee tracking isn't solely driven by foot correction and foot activation. If someone is putting more than one of these into your shoes, something big and heavy again.
Should people be experimenting with these at home?
No, I don't believe in self-application of this stuff. It needs to be done in an informed manner. It should be done by a trained bike fitter. To that end, I don't even sell them on our web store anymore, because I don't want people playing with it themselves. If you do it wrong, you have the potential to hurt yourself. These videos give you a little bit of information, but a little bit of information can be a dangerous thing. But I think it's more to give you a bit of an understanding of what each system does, rather than giving you the tools to apply it yourself. Because you need to understand how to screen someone. You need to understand where the pain or discomfort might be coming from. We talked a little bit about discomfort on the outside of the foot. I mean, that could be driven by your feet being too close together, too much pronation in one foot, your saddle being too high, your reach being too long, your shoes aren't great, your shoes don't fit. Certain shoe brands will drive that as well. So there are a lot of different drivers for pain in this realm. So it's important to try to not self-medicate. Stacks. This is a leg length stack. It is intended to balance a leg length discrepancy, which a lot of people possess. Most of the people that I treat have discrepancies of less than 5 millimeters, and actually it's hard to diagnose whether they're actually a true leg length difference. My finding is that most people who possess a leg length difference, the shorter leg is accompanied by a comparatively tighter hip. And what that means is that when you apply one of these, between the shoe and the cleat is its intended application, is it impinges the hip through the top of the stroke, through top dead center, which actually can serve as a driver of pushing the rider in the opposite direction. So it actually can have the opposite effect of what you're trying to achieve. I would only use one of these in very, very extreme cases, and provided the rider's functionality can accommodate it. The other thing I found with these, I find these very commonly applied to individuals who have had bike fits using a certain motion capture system. These have been used as a means of pleasing the motion capture system. So the way a motion capture system works is that they apply, the fitter applies infrared sensors to certain areas of the body, usually incorrectly. It's put through an algorithm which tracks the movement of the joints in space. And what we've found is that we're finding fitters fitting these to try and balance the leg extension of each leg. So what they'll typically find is that if you've got someone who sits off to the right hand side because the saddle's too high, some fitters will apply this to the left leg to improve the leg extension number rather than actually looking at the rider. So I would say if this is being applied in a considered manner, i.e. you've been screened for it, they've checked you for a leg length difference, there are a number of ways of doing it, and you're confident that they've screened you correctly, then this might be a good way of leveling your pelvis on the saddle. If they're looking at their computer and going, I think you've got a leg length discrepancy, and then they start bringing some of these out, BikeFit James told you could.
That marks the end of today's episode of Bike Fit Tuesdays. If you have any questions for James, please put them in the comment section down below and he'll do his best to answer them. Also, if you'd like to book a fit with him because he's a bike fitter, then all the information will be down below and I will link to his website. Goodbye.